Okay, in one of the other intros, in full disclosure, I didn't say HVAC Success Secrets Revealed. I missed out the revealed. So this time I'm going to call it HVAC Revealed. So anyways, this is us. This is where we're at. We're tired. It's been a great expo at the AHR. But our second to last podcast that we had on is Jim Fultz from Copeland. And man, that guy can talk in a good way. In a good way. It was a fascinating conversation. Evan, what was your favorite part?
Diving into the recession. Looking at what is potentially ahead, and whether it's now or a year from now or 5 years from now, the fact is downturns in the market happen. But what is it that you're going to do about it? How is it that you're going to show up for your team? All of that is important, and we dove into all of that.
Mm-hmm. And the other part that I liked was the touching on the emotions of failure and having to lay people off or fire people. And it's a real thing. But we also talked about a few things that we can do in our day-to-day business and our day-to-day lives to help overcome that burden, to be able to lessen it on ourselves. Super important piece. And also in there, profits. Talking about that too.
Very important.
Mm-hmm. But we want to hear from you. I'll leave a comment down below on what your favorite part of today's episode was. But first, a word from our sponsors. CHIIRP, Elite Call, and On-Purpose Media. So Elite Call, they are a U.S.-based call center champion for the home service industries for 20 years, actually. They've been outbounding clients' databases, filling dispatch boards with lucrative service and sales appointments, and boosting memberships like no other. They don't make calls. They actually directly integrate into your CRM, giving you a seamless experience. Don't let your competition get ahead. Let Elite Call connect with your customers and fill your board. You can visit them today at elitecall.net right there.
And we've got CHIIRP. Transform your home service business with CHIIRP, the ultimate automation toolbox. Capture more leads. Connect instantly when skyrocket your sales. CHIIRP integrates seamlessly with platforms like ServiceTitan and House Call Pro, offering automated texts, emails, and even ringless voicemails. Boost your Google reviews and customer loyalty with our proven rehash programs. Schedule your demo today and get an exclusive 25% off your first 3 months. Visit chirp.com/HSSR for HVAC Success Secrets Revealed and start boosting your revenue today.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to HVAC Success Secrets Revealed, a show where we interview industry leaders and disruptors, revealing the success secrets to create and unleash the ultimate HVAC business. Now your hosts, Thaddeus and Evan.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of HVAC Success Secrets Revealed with Thaddeus and Evan, where we have good conversation with good people, and any good conversation worth having is worth having over some bevies, but a little too early. Evan's actually started, so there we go. He's got the moon lucky.
I had a long walk here.
He had a long walk, lugging all of his suitcase. I didn't. I laughed. I got a good, funny video of him. We are live at the 2024 AHR Expo in lovely Chicago, and we have on Jim Fultz from, you guessed it, Copeland on in the background. He is the technical training specialist. You've been in the industry for 35 years. I had the math on that because years. I know when I was born, since 1988, ran 2 businesses, sold 2 businesses as well, moved across the country for a female. And now
as
here we are.
Usually happens.
Yeah, as it usually happens. And now here we are.
Worth every minute of it.
Right? Worth every minute of it. There you go. So welcome to the show, Jim.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You show or you say how old I am within the industry, and my favorite story, and some people have probably already heard this, is in 1992. I went to an RSES class held in it was Montgomery County Joint Vocational Center at the time. It's MTC now, I believe. And they had a class on proper refrigerant usage that me and my mentor went to. Took the class. It was like an all-day class. Took the test, passed the test, got a letter from RSES that says, "Congratulations on successfully passing the RSES refrigerant usage class. Although no guidelines currently exist, we feel confident that you will be grandfathered in should the EPA regulate refrigerants." And so I like to tell people, I've been in the industry longer than refrigerants have been restricted.
There's a claim to fame.
Right?
Yeah.
That is a good claim to fame.
It makes me old.
So walk us through a brief history. I know we're talking about before the show, but I want to hear from you kind of your brief history in the industry.
So the industry was, and I think this is a relatable thing to a lot in the industry. A lot of us have ADHD. And in my era of time,
Guilty.
it was not diagnosed. And it's kind of interesting because I was at the ACA Fall conference here in Indianapolis this last fall, sitting in the back of the room with a couple gentlemen that's older than me, and the speakers talking about how we're hands-on people. We like to work with our hands, and he says, and a lot of that can come with people that are ADHD. And I turn to the guy beside me and I say, I found out when my son was diagnosed. And he looks at me and says, me too. And the old guy on the other side of him looks at us and says, me too. And so the reality is we like working with our hands. Sitting at a desk, it's hard.
Yeah.
We like being outside. We like being able to go in and out. And that's where I found myself at graduation of high school and was excited to be able to go directly into trade school and learn a trade. Heating and air was a trade that I picked at the time, and I've never looked back. I had a mentor there in Eaton, Ohio, where I grew up. Dick Ashman was his name, and wealth of information. I learned so much through my early years from him about the trade. And he's kind of been that inspiration a little bit of where I've passed through in the 34, 35 years here now of starting after the trade school, working for a company for a couple of years, starting my own company there, running that 7 years, selling it because of, the now wife in California, and being out there, starting a second one and running with it, and getting to the point, going through what I call the Great Recession. And I don't know if you have other stories that deal with people working through that or not.
It depends on how long a business has been really around for, and have they went through the Great Recession in 2009, right? And what happened there with everything 2008 and that. And it's a powerful thing because we're coming up to another recession. It's a dirty word for a lot of people, and some people.
Potential's right here.
Potential's right here, and some people say, well, okay, well, there is no recession. It's the first recession is between your ears. But there's other realities that it does happen, right? So, and you mentioned some interesting statistics to me about what you went through and what you learned. So walk us through, I'm curious more on what happened during that time to you, to the business, and what you needed to pivot and adjust.
So here's the kicker of running a business on a high school education. It's a real challenge because a lot of techs say, hey, I know everything there is to know about this trade. I can work for myself, and if I go out and make $100 today, I'm golden. It's covering today's bills, and not understanding the business side of things, not realizing that 30% of that job needs just simply to cover overhead, and 30% needs to cover labor, 30% is your material cost. That's 90. And if you are over on any of those, then the 10% profit doesn't exist. You're either breaking even or going backwards. And understanding the business side of things is really a challenge of doing that. Some of the tips that I would say in running a business is get involved with flat rate pricing. Have your pricing up front. Get somebody that can get you a book together on what your pricing is.
Shout out the new flat rate, Daniel Putnam.
There you go. And because that is so beneficial, and your customers will love the fact that they're not guessing about how much that bill's going to be. They know before you start.
Yep.
And so doing things like that, having that flat rate pricing, being able to pour time and investment into your technicians. And some of that time is training in the shop. Some of that is field training. And there's times that as a technician, you can be out there and you put in a brand new board, turn the power on, and smoke comes out of that one too. And it's like, I got to go tell the boss I just smoked a board. And a good boss is going to look at that, and he's going to look at that technician and say, did you learn something? And if the technician can honestly say, yeah, I learned, the boss should be able to say it was worth it. You know what to do next time.
Yep.
And so a quote that I came up with years ago that's the only personal quote I would put to my name is simply this. The only difference between professionals and do-it-yourselfers is do-it-yourselfers say oops out loud.
Yeah.
it's okay to make the mistake, correct it, own it, be responsible and ethical with it, and move on. And so the challenge is with that of how do you get through that, and how do you understand all of these numbers and everything going through a recession? Well, for me, it was going back to college and actually getting an associate degree in business management. And at that point, for anybody that's running a business right now, and it's like, oh, that would be huge for me. Here's the fun fact about it. You'll be in there with a whole bunch of teenagers, and you'll be pulling straight A's, and they'll be like, how does he do it? Is he studying? It's like, no, because I've experienced everything that the professor is teaching, and light bulbs are going off every day. It's like, that's what I should be doing there. And you've already can relate in real life to what is being taught. Now you got the correct answers, the correct keys to go out and make it successful.
Right. And it's funny that you say that, because I have a Bachelor of Management degree, and a lot of what I learned in school, I don't actually really apply in my business, but I imagine because of the experience, right? Because you go to experience, and now you're going, and now you're learning the principles.
Yes.
That's why people like executive MBAs, for example, after you've been in the workforce for such a long time, that you go back and now you understand the theory behind a lot of it, not just the application of it.
Absolutely.
Which is smart.
Yeah.
I'm curious, the new flat rate and flat rate pricing, and obviously I'm referencing the new flat rate themselves and
Go
Daniel
John
put them there.
Ellis.
So yeah, and like just the things that they're doing over there, but the new flat rate versus menu pricing, and how much of a difference menu pricing can make versus just straight flat rate pricing.
Give me a little definition of
Okay,
what you're
so
talking.
good,
menu
better,
pricing.
best
Good,
would be
better,
menu,
best.
and
Good, better,
flat rates
best
just here's your price.
Good, better, best was always an option for me on installs. There were times that I would go out with a good, better, best, and the good, better, best was sometimes equipment, sometimes accessories, and I actually did a quote once. Customer got 3 prices. Their air conditioner was still working, but they knew it was going to be going out here in another year or two. They wanted to be ahead of the game with it. They got 3 prices. They called me up and they said all 3 prices were within like $500 of each other, but they were all $5,000 more than what we expected. So we're going to wait a little bit longer. But by the way, you gave an upgrade option of zoning, and we sleep upstairs and are miserable every summer. Is it possible to do that upgrade option as a standalone item? And I said, well, we would be doing things during the install that would be labor that would go towards that, so there would be additional labor from what that cost is there, but we absolutely can take what you have and do it. And turned around, got the job just simply for the good, better, best, the additional upgrade option, not necessarily nicer equipment, but the option to zone. Homeowner calls us 2 months later and said, and this is several years ago, so utilities were still there, but not quite as bad. They said our summer month went from $400 last month to $100 the same month this year. A year ago to this year, 400 to 100. They said, it's going to pay for itself. It's usually zoning on two levels, where the second story is going to be 10 degrees warmer than the first story. It's 5 less than 10 years that upgrade option for zoning pays for itself if you only have one system to do 2 stories.
Yep.
Love that.
And so those options are always there. There's options as far as upgrade options. There's contractors that I've talked to in recent years that they like to use the turbo capacitor because it's a more expensive capacitor, but it has a longer warranty. And so they say, would you like to upgrade your capacitor with this one that has a longer warranty? And it's an upsell to the homeowner. They're making more off of the capacitor. They always have it on their truck because it's universal. And they're giving all their technicians a little spiff for every time they upsell something. And he was sharing that with me because I was sharing our universal SureSwitch contactor, which is a multi-volt contactor. The coil voltage is 24, 120, 240 volt. On the voltage, you can use any 3 on it, but it's got contacts in it that they have an eye sensor, a little light sensor, and every time the contacts open, if there's a spark, it will adjust itself on the sine wave. We have, let's go back to trade school training here of AC signal, where we have positive 120, negative 120. We're fluctuating across 0, 60 hertz, 60 times a second. And this Sure Switch contactor has the ability to adjust itself 1/60th of a second on that sine wave. And for the first 5-6 times when the contact's open and it sees light, it'll move it towards that 0 point where it's crossing 0. And so the end result is we've created a contactor that lasts 5 times as long as anything out there in the market, as well as a contactor that's a completely sealed contactor and a contactor that has a 5-year warranty. So this owner was like, hey, let's put that on our premium upgrade for a contactor, have it as an upsell, and offer that 5-year warranty with it.
Yep.
And so upsells are good, better, best, absolutely. Homeowners need to be able to have those choices, whether
Yep.
it's a repair or a full-blown system replacement.
Yep.
I'm all in for it.
100%.
Well, it's the old adage, right? People love to buy, but they hate to be sold to,
Exactly.
right? When you present the options, just lay it out for them and say, hey, what do you want to do? What do you think? And you've led them along the way, asked them the right questions, found out that they were uncomfortable upstairs, so the zoning system makes sense, right? Now you can have those conversations, you can lay that out for them.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because a lot of people have ideas of whether they want the best of something or they want to save the most money, and you as a technician or a contractor in front of that person have no idea where they fall on that spectrum. So to give them the option of something less expensive and something that's a premium, they're like, this guy's down my alley. I can pick and I can feel good because I save money, or I can pick this because I'm helping the environment with this green energy heat pump.
Right.
Well, and they feel it's their choice. That's
Absolutely.
the other part. It's their choice to be able to do it. They don't feel pressured into making the decision. So, in kind of going back a little bit to the recession part, I mean, I'm sure that obviously was one of them.
Before we get to the recession part, can we talk about failures quick?
Yeah, sure.
Sweet. You talked about the technician who burned the board, right?
Yes.
Do you have a culture of celebrating failures at the company, right? Being able to celebrate and acknowledge that as the way of learning, like you pointed out. But is that a part of your culture in your business where you can then bring that technician into the room in front of all the other team members and have them tell what it is that they did and what they learned? Because there's 2 ways you learn, from your own mistakes and from other people's mistakes.
And one of my favorite contractors I visited since I've transitioned from being a contractor to helping other technicians and contractors is the one that in their office they have the wall of shame. all of those parts, they're plastered on the wall, and the technicians walk by them every day. It's like, oh, that was mine. Oh
no. What did I do?
Yeah.
I like that.
So yeah, there you go. Your tip of the day for contracting business here. Put a wall of shame up and brag about it and make it so that we learned from that. It wasn't shame on you. It was we learned from that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, and hey, I was only up there once.
There you go.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. Is I learned my lesson and it never happened again.
Yeah. Remember that guy? Yeah, the one that filled that half of the board.
Yeah, right.
But here's the other part about that too, is not just the failures they have within there, but also the idea failures, right? A lot of times when you're gathering intel from the field and gathering ideas, and your techs and your CSRs and your dispatchers and everybody in the business is also creating a culture of bringing ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Not every idea that's going to get brought forward is going to be a good idea. Google X Labs, good example. They actually celebrate when ideas and projects that they start get canceled or fail because they want more ideas from it. I mean, you take 100 ideas and 90 of them are going to be dog shit. You're going to try 10 of them and 1 to 2 of them are going to stick. But if you only have 10 ideas, you have less things that you're going to implement in your business. And so that's the other part, is encouraging that culture of ideas from every part of it.
Of being willing to make it work. And the challenge as a company owner, how do you implement that? Mm-hmm. Because the reality is a quote from my father-in-law, who runs a 50-plus employee garage door business in Northern California. If it's your idea, it'll work.
Yep.
And so the key is to take this idea that you have as a company owner, plant the seed in those technicians and those employees, and wait for them to come back to you and say, "Hey, boss, what do you think about this?"
Yep.
And it's like, great idea.
That's a great idea.
And even
Why don't you try that?
Right? And even if the idea is 80% of what you would want, their plan, their execution on their plan at 80% of what your idea and your plan is going to
improvement of
be
the
way.
company.
It's going to be way better than you giving them the idea and executing on it. And that's Jocko Willenick, Leadership Strategies and Tactics, great book. He talked a lot about that. Now, if it's 50%, okay, ask more questions for them to come up with the ideas for the solutions themselves to that plan to get it to an 80%.
Yeah.
And now they execute on it. They're going to be way more bought in than you just telling them what to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's your idea, it'll work.
Yeah, 100%. So in transitioning back to that recession part of things, coming up to what we're talking about, and I think you'd mentioned the flat rate pricing is one of the big things that a person can put in place. What is something that, I guess, one thing or two things that you did in 2009 that would be still applicable today? I think a lot of contractors already moved to the new flat rate, and they just now to get to that menu, good, better, best. And so looking at something that might be timeless, that happened then, that is still applicable today, that they can learn from.
Absolutely. And part of that is continuing education. We are here in the trades to learn I'm still learning. Just continue going to classes, going to training, take the time to go to events, sit in sessions. I'm here helping with a booth. I've been over in the sessions myself, learning more of how to do my job better. And that ongoing learning is something. I got a wall in my home office full of all these certificates from, and half of them would be from distributors that I went in for a half a day or a day class and actually got a certificate for being able to go in and learn something more. And so that learning never stops, and continuing as a company owner, embrace that culture of learning. Be willing to invest the time into your technicians so that they can go and get some more education. And that's really a challenge. But it starts with you as a company owner. And if you're out there as a company owner and you're doing it on a high school education, invest in yourself. Because one of the hardest things of the recession was that I got these people that are family, and I got to tell them, sorry, I don't have work for you. And it's hard, and if you don't understand the books, you don't understand the numbers, what was happening was I was trying to keep them as long as I could, and I was keeping them on the payroll, but the billable hours weren't there. And the financial stress that was put on me as a business owner, trying to keep these guys feeling responsible for keeping food on their table, was robbing food off of my own, because I didn't have my own knowledge of how to run a business, how to be a business manager. So the first investment of a technician turned into a company, take the time, get that education, learn what the numbers need to be so that you can be successful in your company. Biggest lesson I learned out of the Great Recession was that you can't, you always want to be Mr. Nice Guy, and there's a place for that.
Yep.
But at the same point in time, it's a business, and you got to run it as a business, not as a family feeding trough.
Right, and I mean, there's two things that I want to touch on there, and one is the numbers part of things, right? And there's a lot of free education out there these days, and a lot of good individuals and good programs and YouTube that a person can learn. So if they don't necessarily have to go the route that you went and going to college and taking that on the side. They can learn those things, buy a course, find a program somewhere and learn it. It doesn't have to be university level education, or just ask others that have went through it. Ask other business owners. Billy Stevens is a good example when you look at Sarah Systems and what he does in Billy Go. And if anybody reaches out, he'll create the time and help them understand and learn some of those things. But the other part I want to touch on is the individuals and keeping them on payroll longer than you should have. big lesson, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I know the number that you shared before. You had to lay off staff.
Yeah.
It's never easy having to lay off staff or fire individuals. It's probably one of the worst things that I've ever had to do as a business owner myself is fire people, especially when they're good people, but they're not maybe the right fit, or they're not cutting it, or in this case, layoffs. What's the psychology like? How did you go about making sure that you internally were okay with that decision?
That was where the lack of education was the whole hiccup, was because by the time I was laying them off, financially it was affecting me, and at that point it was like, I don't have the option, I have to do this. And so the layoff, even though it might have seemed painful to lay them off as a friend, an employee, if I didn't, it was going to be more painful for me. And so at that point, it was just kind of like the lesser of two evils. And so to lay off when you're not in that role, that would be difficult. But at the same point in time, once you have the education of running a business and you understand those numbers and understand it's the business, I've sold the company since. My employees have went to various other companies, a good bit of them. I know where they're working today. And they're happily employed. Very possible the same thing could have happened at that point in time. They would have found other jobs, and when I did lay them off, they did. It was just going through that step of feeling that level of responsibility, and then recognizing with the education that your role is to run a company and make a profit. Your role is you are not required to make X amount of people in this country an income.
Right. That's the emotional side, right? And it's so good to understand and tell yourself that thing, right? And I think more people need to hear that message, is that, hey, it's okay. Did you ever feel like a failure when you had to do that?
It was hard. Yeah, it was. It was like, what's going on here? There was a lot of frustrations through all that, because we were in a booming housing market, and we had all of these companies that were doing tract homes, which I'll try to refrain from talking about the level of quality that could have showed up there. And all of a sudden the tract homes business is gone, and that level of technician that's used to his job going out and running a thermostat wire and going to the next house, and that's all he's done, and now he's being thrown at custom homes, and people that are used to running ductwork with chainsaws are in custom homes. That may be an exaggeration. I don't know. A rabbit trail side story was a gentleman. He was a Wild Western, and actually he hit 5th of the fastest draw in the state of California in gunfighting. And we went to replace a window unit that was in the middle of his bedroom wall once. And the installers opened up the back of their truck, and he's looking there. He says, "You don't have the right tools." And they're like, "Well, yeah, we got everything we need." He says, "No." He says, "You know how I put that in? Shotgun and chainsaw." and so it's like, no, I'm sorry, Gerald, we're not going to put a shotgun and chainsaw on our truck.
Yeah, that's funny.
But that's where the term hacker came in. And so that was the level, a different level of installation technician. Their work's gone. Now they're coming in and they're taking the work of what used to be a premium system that was sold for a premium price, and those were drying up for us. We were getting undercut on our bread and butter jobs, and there was nothing we could do about it. So that was probably the most disheartening thing, was when we're working for a general contractor on a custom home, and we have all of these different trades that are in there with us, and I'm looking at some of these trades that this general willingly brought in from another sector, and the homeowner is like, "Oh, I'm sure hoping that they'll get some plumbing done. We haven't had a shower in 2 weeks." And it's like, "So your plumbing contractor left you without any bathroom at all in your home?" "Yeah." And that was kind of the level of quality that was shifting in '09 into the sector that was supposed to be custom homes and custom remodels, and that was probably the most disheartening thing was seeing those types of homes getting the lesser quality of customization in them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, that like the boom, right? And you have a boom, and then you're having people trying to slap it together to keep up, and then everything happens from that. And so looking at, I guess, the disheartening thing, the emotions of laying people off, the failures, and in feeling like that. And look, everybody goes through in business. Yeah. And if you're listening to this right now and you're feeling like this next question is for you, because this is going to be a real thing for you, potentially coming up in 2024. How did you pull yourself out of it?
Well, So it was rising above it and staying above it and not going down to the level of where it was at. And there were jobs that I would go out to. A classic example, an older subdivision in our main town there in California that was built in the 50s. They had heat only. Air conditioning wasn't even put in these homes, so they had hard pipe underneath the floor, 4 and 5 inch round duct to every room. And the homeowner saying, hey, I want to upgrade and add air conditioning. And I go down there in crawl space and look at that and say, we need to upgrade all your ductwork. It doesn't have the capacity to handle the airflow you need, and your register size is too small for your throw and everything. It all needs to be increased. And I'm one of 3 quotes. And the other 2 quotes say, oh, no, your ductwork's fine. We'll just put the air conditioner in. And so I addressed that with the homeowner. I says, I'm not going to give you air conditioning until I can address that. And he says, well, my other quotes said they would. But one did say that if the airflow was a little low, that they could increase my return air. And it was like, well, good luck. And so the emotion with that is, I'm not going to go to that level. I'm going to sleep at night because I know that when I'm done with the job and it's got my name signed on it, that the quality is there, and I maintain that clear throughout the history of work.
Well, perfect. And that's, a good thing, because you're going to see and I have a feeling that people are going to lower some of their prices coming up here just to get jobs, to be able to keep food on the table. And so knowing that you need to maintain your quality and your standard. What about the emotional side of laying off individuals and having to recover from that, the feeling like a failure and having to recover from that? What would you tell somebody who feels like that right now?
That at this point, keep doing what's right, keep doing a good job, and it'll come back, and you'll get it back. If you're doing the right thing, you get rewarded for it. And sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it's working through things, and sometimes it's education to get there. Maybe I needed to learn something more. For me, it was going back and getting a degree in business management that allowed me to see that allowed me to take a company in 2009 that was, well, actually before that, let's go back to like 2005, and the income I was coming off of with a dozen employees, and then going through that recession, and then coming out in 2017 with 6 employees, with half the employees, and making the same net profit in 2017 with 6 employees that I had with 12 employees in 2005. So it's learning, it's understanding where you need to be. And my old mentor in Eaton, Ohio used to say, profit is not a dirty word. We all need it. That's what we're here for, really. Right. And so don't be afraid of it. Right. Embrace it, move forward with it, and see what you can do with it.
Don't be an accidental nonprofit.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But that's how you can take care of your people.
It is.
That's the bonuses, the trips, the whatever it is, that parties, gifts, etc. that you can do for them. It comes out of that profit. If that profit isn't there, you can't do anything extra to take care of them. So it's incredibly important. Which comes back to the beginning, which says, know your financials. Do you know your numbers?
Do you know your numbers?
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, my tablet went
to sleep. Your tablet died. So, see if you had anything else before you want to shift into what Copeland's doing.
Nope. Let's hit on that. We want to make sure we touch on that.
So, technical training specialist, Copeland.
Yes.
What's that involve? What's it do? What's Copeland working on? We're here at AHR. So
So this has been an interesting challenge because technical training specialist at Copeland, I was hired prior to the sale of Copeland last May when the residential and commercial heating and air division was sold off. It was spun off and we're standalone at this point, and so our standalone company name is Copeland. However, we have multiple companies underneath that umbrella name. One of them being Copeland, the compressors. Another being White Rogers, which is the electronic controls, Sensi thermostat, White Rogers thermostats, gas valves, and cooling products like filter dryers, TXVs. We still have a full line of product for a lot, primarily residential heating and air. And so I actually was hired under the White Rogers name in St. Louis, Missouri. So when I introduce myself, I'm trying to do it, I'm Copeland White Rogers. So we're tying those two names together so we know what department that I come out of. And in 2017, my company was to the point my growth was good. However, I was running ads nonstop for a whole year, and finding labor was extremely difficult. That is a problem, and I think there's different people combating that different ways, whether they're trying to bring on people and train them themselves. There's a lot of good ideas out there of how to do that. But I decided, with the knowledge I had of 30 years experience at the time, I would be better off being able to share my passion, share this experience with a broader audience than just simply the half a dozen employees that I had at the time. And so the business was sold, and I took on a role of tech support and training for Northern California. Did that for a year when this opportunity to come work for White Rogers was available, and interviewed with them. And so I count it a privilege to be able to be here and to be able to share what I've learned over the last 35 years in heating and air with anybody in the industry out there that, you got a question, you don't understand how something works. I might not have the answer, but there's a lot of things that I have been through in all these years that I can help work through for training, and I like to think of myself as somebody that, you got a problem, hey, give me a call, I'm out there to help. I do training. The nice part is with the Northern California job, I was doing training and tech support, and tech support was very busy because I was the first line of defense. At White Rogers, we do have a tech support team, which I do a lot of the training for them, and they take care of a couple levels there. And if it gets to the point that it's beyond what they can walk through and help, then it comes to me. So I still do tech support. I'm just the last line. It's the buck stops here, and I get the fun ones. So which I really like because I like the hard challenges. So that's part of what I do. I also have that field experience. The engineers I work with, great people, and their role is to understand all of the circuits inside of a circuit board. But when you get it in its environment with gas valve, pressure switch, transformer, all that, it's beyond the scope of what they've created, and that's where I can come in and help there at headquarters with function testing of new prototypes. If there's a hiccup of any sort, I get to go in the lab, recreate it, and work the solution out of how to make it so that when we're launching this product, we're launching it as flawless as possible. And so, fun job.
Well, it sounds neat because you're gathering the data set from all different places, right? And we were chatting beforehand that you're gathering the data from the field. You're gathering the data from the lab. You're gathering the data from the tech support, and you're pooling it all together, and you're making the connection between the 3 points to be able to make the product better.
So a plug for me here. If you got a White Rogers or a Sensi thermostat, gas valve, electronic control, and there's something that it doesn't seem like it's doing quite right, or something you wish it did that it's not doing, shout out to me, reach out to me. You can get me through White Rogers. You can get me on LinkedIn and share what you'd like to see or what you want. Because as a former contractor, it was like, man, I wish I had an inroad into that manufacturer where I could say, hey, why aren't you thinking about doing this? Why don't you have this included in that product? Well, I'm the man. I got the wonderful privilege of being the guy that will take those solutions and be able to give that feedback back to the designers, the product managers, and make that product better. And anything we can do to make the product better, easier. One of the things, these new terms that I didn't have out as a technician, what's the pain points of that job? You know, what are you trying to solve for? And if I can identify pain points and it's something that's solvable, we'll put it in the product. Classic example, our latest integrated furnace control board, the full IFC that does the blower, as well as the burner operations. We created it without harnesses so that any manufacturer of the 550 SKUs that it crosses over can plug directly into the board. It will auto-configure itself to identify what furnace it's in, so you don't even have to do any programming for that. The only programming you get to do, either on board or through an NFC app, is to tell it that it's a PSC or an ECMX or X13 blower motor, and then what like the heat-off delay settings are. Because your heat-off delay settings on every board, whether it's OEM or Universal, is typically 60, 90, 120, 180. You got to pick how long you want it to run before it shuts off. You still have to put that into this board. But the really cool feature about this board is, and I'll back up one more step, for quite a few boards, we've actually put pins on our universal boards where you could take a DC voltmeter, touch the pins, and it's 1 volt DC converts to 1 microamp. You could read your microamp reading of your flame current without ever taking the flame current sensor circuit apart.
Right.
This new board not only has those pins, but it also, in the microchip, converts it to what the reading is and displays it on the display of the board. So without even pulling a meter out, as soon as you got live fire, you look at the display on the board and it flashes between HT for heat and C, number. You got the flame current reading right there while it's live fire without a meter. And that's, to me, that's a pain point that we solved. We solved the ability of something that's hard to understand, hard to do. How do you get that reading? What is that reading? Where should that reading be? That's a lot of questions, sorry. But to answer that last one, where should it be? We like to see it, I like to see it between 1.5 to 4 or 5. That's a good range. Can it be less than 1? Yes, it can. We have boards that read some of the lowest readings or can pull some of the lowest readings in the industry. We can go down below 0.5. But if you're below 1, you should be looking at that sensor and looking at cleaning it and doing something with it.
Right.
Well, it gives somebody the data that's right in front of them. Right?
It is.
It simplifies things.
It does.
It makes it easier, so you can spend more time on the more important parts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And with that board, you also get the ability for it to read error codes and give you numbers to match up on a legend on the front of the control, so that when your technician's going out and it's like, oh, it quit working, what is it? And you look at the control, it says E18. It's like, what is that? Oh, high limit out. And you already have the circuit where the issue is known from the board, and you're that much closer to a accurate diagnosis rather than starting to, is it this? Is it, trying to guess where it's at. Right. So the benefit of being able to do that on those controls is things that we have done everything we can to alleviate those pain points.
Yep.
Makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How can we make the tech's life easier? And it's a great example, again, of coming back to the whole idea of the recession. Well, how can you pivot? What new ideas can you come up with? You're going to try a whole bunch of shit. Some of it's not going to work, and that's okay. Keep moving forward. Hopefully it wasn't the one that crippled your company and you were able to pull out early enough. But
I survived it. So,
exactly.
I survived it and made it through and made it a success. And one more plug for that for business owners. The success was the maintenance contracts.
Right.
If you want a sellable product, if you want to look forward to the time that you want to retire out of your business and have a sellable product, a sellable business to sell, the larger volume of annual contracts you can have is the most valuable asset that you can add to a company.
Yep. I would agree with that.
Especially the ones that are 8-year units or older.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's your income
Right.
for the following year.
Well, and
Correct.
having the data on your maintenance agreements to know
Yes.
which ones are 8 years and older. That's the other. That's the
Yeah.
other key part, right?
it is.
So,
How
Jim,
so you mentioned LinkedIn. Is there anywhere else where you want people to get in touch with you?
That right now, that's
the
my
best one?
main
Yep.
spot. I'm working on Instagram. I'm not sure how well that's going, but
You're not doing the TikTok dances yet?
Not doing TikTok yet, but I.
so we're not going
I-
to bust a song out, and you can do one right here. It's okay. I wouldn't do one either.
Well, yeah. Might embarrass my kids,
right,
You know,
so,
they are like, Dad, chill.
Jim, so LinkedIn, Wright Rogers via the website there. Thank you for taking the time. I know when
Oh,
we
you
chatted Monday night, and we're like, got to get you on the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And thank you for taking the time. Thank you for making the time out of your scheduled AHR. But before we wrap up, we do have one final question here for you.
All right.
What is one question that you wished people would ask you more, but they don't?
This is supposed to be ongoing conversation. I'm not supposed to stop and think about this. Probably one of the things I already alluded to is the fact that just simply ask the question. If there's something you don't understand about anything technical about a system, whether it's the refrigeration cycle, whether it's there's things. I'm getting ready to teach a couple classes at HVACR Symposium and HVAC Excellence on understanding dual fuel. And one of the biggest challenges that I think that's not being addressed yet is understanding what we call refrigerant stacking. And that's the simple fact that a condenser condenses vapor to a liquid, and we got this big coil outside that can hold all this liquid. And if we're not a matched system, the inside coil, it can be half that size, and we're supposed to have all this liquid in a condenser. Well, the inside coil turns to the condenser in the heat mode. Where's that refrigerant go? And if it's not a matched system, or if it's a system that's improperly charged, that coil is designed for a specific charge. If you got too much in there, you're going to have higher head pressure, you're going to have a higher electric bill. If you don't have enough in there, it's not going to be creating the heat that it should be, and you're going to be less efficient. And so understanding that liquid's being stored inside in the wintertime, you got to have enough storage space, and don't try to be matching things up that don't have an AHRI number on them, because you're doing your homeowner a big disservice, and you're going to be scratching your head saying, heat pumps, they don't work.
Right. Well, and it starts with 3 words or 4 words. I don't understand.
Yes.
I need help with.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say those words.
Absolutely.
You're, as in the words of Uncle Joe Casera, your ego is not your amigo.
That's right.
So, and check your ego at the door and just ask those
right.
questions, right? When you ask those questions, when you put yourself out there, now they're gonna help you, right? Because you're willing to seek the help. So,
and so I just count it a privilege to be a part of an organization where I can help nationally. I can get out there and can help start. And I think as time goes on, you will see me more out in different parts of the country doing different classes, being able to help that way, and any way that I can help out, that's what I'm here for. The experience is there, and now it's time to share it with anybody I can.
excellent.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much, Jim. Appreciate
Thank you.
the time.
And
You
until
bet.
next time.
Cheers.
Well, that's a wrap on another episode of HVAC Success Secrets Revealed. Before you go, 2 quick things. First off, join our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/HVAC Revealed. The other thing, if you took one tiny bit of information out of this show, no matter how big, no matter how small, all we ask is for you to introduce this to one person in your contacts list. That's it. That's all. One person. So they too can unleash the ultimate HVAC business. Until next time, cheers.